Listen, thank you guys all so much for joining us today. I'm super excited for Brandon's presentation. Before we get to that, I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about why we started this webinar series. And pretty much what happened was at the onset of the shelter-in-place orders with COVID-19 and stuff like that, Vicky, Shannon, myself, and TJ Woodward, we were getting a lot of calls from people that are in recovery that were struggling, people that aren't in recovery, but we're still struggling, and they were asking us for resources. And being that the four of us are in a field full of really wonderful people, we thought that we would start this webinar as a forum for us to offer support to you guys. Okay. And so I think this is our fifth one now, fourth or fifth, I think. And we're having a lot of fun, and I feel like they're going really well. So that's kind of why we got it going. And before we jump into the presentation and our intros and stuff, I just want to give you guys a little bit of the housekeeping items. And the first of which is that this is a webinar, which means that all we can see is each other. I can't see you guys. So if you're waving like, hey, Jeremy, what's up? I can't see you, but I feel it and I appreciate it. Okay, just wanted to put that out there. The other thing is that probably our favorite feature of the webinar is that we do a Q&A. So at any point during the presentation today, if you have questions or comments or anything like that, use the Q&A feature, okay? So if you put it in just the general chat, I might lose it, and I want to make sure that we get to your questions. So super important, use that Q&A feature. After Brandon's presentation, we're going to get all those questions answered, okay? Also, the other thing is that if you're not able to stay the whole time, that's totally okay. I record these, and I'll put it up online tomorrow. So, and then we'll email a link to everybody so that you guys can watch it if you miss it or if you want to watch it again too. I think the last thing that I want to make mention of is that we're going to send everybody an email with all our contact info. So if you do need additional resources, make sure you check that email, okay? Because it's going to have all our contact info if you need support, all right? So that being said, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeremy Miller. I work with TJ Woodward at Conscious Recovery, and I work at an outpatient in Los Gatos called Embodied Recovery. And that's me. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Shannon. Shannon, you ready?
I'm ready, Freddie.
Do it.
Ready to hear some Brandon today. Thank you so much for coming on with us today, Brandon. We appreciate having you. So I'm Shannon Clay. I work with Discovery Behavioral Health. We have substance use disorder treatment for adults, mental health disorder treatment for adults and adolescents, and eating disorders for adults and adolescents on West Coast, East Coast, and Texas, basically. I've been in the field for a super long time and love helping people get to healing resources wherever that is. So that's my part of why I wanted to participate in this webinar with this fabulous bunch of colleagues that I have. And I just want to add on to what Jeremy said with the other thing that we'll do at the end of the, after the webinars, Jeremy's going to send everybody a survey. So I want to put a plug in. One of the things that Vicky and Jeremy and TJ and I do is meet and talk about what type of content can be helpful to people and what you guys would like to see, or what the universe is like seeking. And we've been hearing a lot about domestic violence lately. So I want to say that next week we're having Dr. Jody with domestic violence and some resources for people that find themselves in that situation. And along the lines of the survey, if y'all could please fill out the survey and give us ideas of what kind of content you feel like you might need or the universe needs, we would love to bring you some resources regarding those topics. So thank you all for being here, and excited to have this day, another Tuesday with everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Shan. Vicky, you want to do yours?
Sure. Vicky Lucas, I'm out here. I've got oceanfront property in Hollister, California. Know anything about Hollister? That's total bullshit. Anyways, I'm excited to have Brandon on the show. I'm so happy that you're here with us, Brandon, the show, the webinar, whatever. I like to think it's a show. I'm an interventionist, Equanimity Interventions, and if you want to know more about what I do, you can get a hold of me. Jeremy will have my information up there. You know, Jeremy and Shannon are absolutely right. This is a free webinar for everybody, for the public, for colleagues, for anybody that needs more resources. And it's like 30 minutes of therapy or hearing a speaker speak. And we hope you all get something out of this. I'm really excited about Brandon. And real quick, I have, you know, it goes right along with Brandon and his story and his struggles. I got two people that I'm really close to on here that have struggled for in and out of rehabs, trying to stay clean. Chris, who's like a son to me, just celebrated a year, and his girlfriend Renee has a year today. So
Woo!
applause for those guys. Right on, guys. Congratulations. And back over to you, Jeremy.
Awesome. Yeah, and congrats, you guys in the audience. That is so awesome. So I want to introduce Brandon. Brandon, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm super excited. I wanted to just read a little bit of your bio so that people in the audience get a little bit of background. So from the highest highs, including sponsorship deals, hit movies, and a best-selling autobiography, to the lowest lows, including stints in prison, rehab, and homelessness on the streets of Baltimore, Brandon has lived a life that defies easy description. Recruited in his early teens as the nation's next top professional skateboarder, Brandon traveled the world with Tony Hawk and was even the first pro skater to ever be sponsored by Gatorade. He then went on to gain international fame as a cast member of the hit MTV Jackass movie series and infamous show Viva La Bam. All the while, however, he was battling a crippling addiction to heroin. Today, Brandon is 5 years sober and travels the country sharing his message of inspiration and help so that anyone who is struggling can recover. Most recently, he was the keynote speaker for the DEA's Heroin and Opioid Youth Summits and is now a certified interventionist professional, a certification which is held by only 163 people in the entire country. His third book, The Streets of Baltimore, will be released this summer. Brandon, thank you so much for being here, man. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited. Okay, now it makes sense. I can see what I look like. I'm really excited to be here. I absolutely love, I absolutely adore, and I have the utmost respect for Vicky. And that could be to a fault. So if Vicky was like, hey, let's go to hell because I hear it's a great time, I'd be like, fuck yeah, let's go. Meaning that I would follow that woman anywhere. But when she asked me if I would take part in something like this, I'm honored when somebody with that much clean time sees in me what sometimes I might forget about myself, that I have a message, one in such that holds that depth and weight that could make someone out there who's struggling feel like they could possibly one day achieve what I've been given, which is only as a direct result of the God of my understanding through having that spiritual experience that came from the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And without any of those things, and not in sequential order, but without those things in my life, and without me saying yes to things like this and keeping things like this in my life, it's not a question of if I will pick up a drink or a drug, it's simply when. Because the reality is I suffer from a disease called alcoholism, not alcoholism. And my disease has a shelf life of 24 hours, and I can't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. So in order to keep what has been so freely given to me, I have to do a few things along the way each day to maintain my sobriety. And what I just experienced prior to getting on here and talking with you, lovely ladies and gentlemen, was I had to accept acceptance, right? And that's not an easy thing for me. I was getting really agitated. I was getting really aggravated. And to be quite honest, I wanted to like smash this computer against the wall because I have a laptop and I'm trying to download the Zoom app and it's not working and it's not allowing me to come in. It's kicking me out. And after I went through all these hoops to just resort to doing it on my cell phone, right? Like I didn't get what I wanted. How dare it go this way? And what I've learned is that things don't happen to me, they happen for me. And I don't need to see the understanding or reasoning as to why they are happening. I just need to accept the fact that it is what it is. You know, I don't know what took me down that whole path. I just went on with what I was talking about with you, but I guess something felt moved to pull me in that direction, and that's where I went. I'm an alcoholic. And my topic tonight that was chosen is when is enough enough? And you know what they told me in achieving sobriety was like, hey kid, you can hit your bottom whenever you want. It's just up to you when you're ready to stop digging. But for an alcoholic like myself, fuck you. That's so much easier said than done. Because right out the gate, when I say, hi, my name is Brandon and I'm an alcoholic, all that simply means is that I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority, and I will never, ever, ever, ever conform unless it becomes my idea. Why? Because I possess this job, and this job places me in a lot of positions I don't like to be in, and it makes me feel a lot of feelings I don't like to feel, and that job consists of knowing everything. So when you politely suggest what I should do, I politely suggest why you should fuck off, because I know. Right? So I'm defined by nature. I hate authority. I'll never conform unless it becomes my idea. I possess this job that consists of knowing everything. That's just right out the gate when I put my hand up and I say, hi, my name's Brandon. I'm an alcoholic. So picture a person that possesses all of those traits and qualities. And a person like that, when's enough enough? My enough was enough. Right when I found myself waking up, fresh off of life support for 7 days, my mother had bought me a plot. People had taken life insurance policies out on me. I had been medevaced to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states for 4 different overdoses. My mother had sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. I had lost count of outpatients and detoxes. You heard in my intro, I had done some things in life that people would equate to success or happiness, which ultimately prolonging me finding the solution that was required for me to be saved, or shall I say separated from my active addiction, because I'm not capable of producing those results on my own. It has to come as a direct result of the spiritual experience. I stand on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, prostituting my body for any person who's purchasing, just to secure enough ways and means to obtain another bag of heroin. My worldly possessions, everything that I own in this world, despite, again, doing the things in life that people would equate to success or happiness that some might even dream of doing, such as like, you know, at the age of 14, being the first skateboarder ever endorsed by Gatorade. They would fly me to Chicago to the Quaker Oats building where they made Gatorade at the time. They put me on one treadmill. They put Michael Jordan on a treadmill directly next to me. They strapped these EKGs to our chest, and they would give us each Gatorade to see the effects that it has on different sports players. At the age of 15, I'm touring the world with Tony Hawk. I'm designing my pro model for Powell Peralta. I have a private tutor that flies with. A little bit further down the road, I end up on those TV shows, Viva La Bam, and those movies, Jackass. And a bit further down the road, I become a New York Times top 10 seller of an autobiography addiction memoir titled Dream Seller. Again, I did some things in life that people would equate to success or happiness, some even dream of doing. But the reality is that I live in an abandoned house on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park. I stand in front of that house all day long selling my body just to get another bag of heroin. My worldly possessions, everything that I own in this world, consists of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. It fits into that bag that doubles as my pillow, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order that my mother had to have served on me, meaning forcibly removed from her premises, because she was literally loving me to death. How did I get there? Right? I had goals. I had dreams. I had aspirations. I'm no fool by any means. I come from better. I know better. I pride myself on thinking outside of the box. After all, my mother's a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital, just retired after 53 years of gainful employment, second longest employer in Mercy Hospital history. Today, currently, my brother is an attorney in the White House practicing pensions and benefits. After all, my father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. He taught me one thing in life: if and when I go to prison, how to conduct myself. Never held a job a day in his life. He ran with the Hells Angels. He was a rather unsavory kind of fella, if you will. I despised that man. I actually excelled at everything that I did to prove a point that I would never become that man. I live with that after school special. I live with that cautionary tale of what not to become, or of what a drink or a drug could do to you in the long run, right? How am I where I'm at? I had the goals, I had the dreams, I had the aspirations. I was not going to become the man that mentored and raised me. Right? You heard it in my introduction. It said that I was 5 years sober. That's incorrect. Right now, I'm 4 years sober. But God willing, the 25th of this month, I'll be celebrating 5 years of continuous sobriety. And what that simply means is that I believe that I've been sober long enough that I can look back and recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now, that prove to me without a shadow of a doubt the reality of the higher power and the work that he does in my life on a daily basis. How did I get there? It's quite simple looking back. I got here because I sat there with a closed mind. I got here because I sat there with a closed heart. I got here because I sat there and I compared out. I got here because I sat there and I proved the point. I got here because I sat there and I possessed that job that consisted of knowing everything. I got here because I sat there and I was defiant by nature. I hated authority and I would never conform unless it became my head. So let's see, I'm now 12 inpatient treatment centers in. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies out on me. I had just woken up from being on life support for 7 days. Medevaced 4 different hospitals in 4 different states from 4 different overdoses. My mother had sold 3 homes to pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. At the end of my run, when she had nothing left to give, she simply went to church across the street from her house. And as she was sitting in the pew crying uncontrollably, Father Mike walked past and he saw my mother crying. He said, "Miss Pat, what's wrong?" Miss Pat, my mother said, "Father Mike, it's Brandon. He's never been worse. There's nothing left I can do to help my son. So I've simply went to God with one prayer." And Father Mike got this look of hope in his eyes. And he said, "Oh yeah, Miss Pat, what's that?" And Miss Pat, my mother said, "Father Mike, it's real simple. The prayer consists of God, please cure him. God, please kill him. Or God, please kill me because I can't take it anymore." And Father Mike, for the first time in his life, he looked at my mother and said, "How dare you go to God with a plan like that about your son? God has a plan for your son. You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And Brandon doesn't know what it is." And again, I've also learned that my life is lived forward and learned backwards. Right? I also told you, I've been sober long enough now to recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now tonight, sharing this message of promise, hope, and freedom that does not consist of a drink or a drug that my dear friend Vicky asked if I'd be willing to do. And when Father Mike said to my mother, "God has a plan for your son. You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And Brandon doesn't know what it is." And what I always say is, thank God I didn't know what it was, because I would have fucked it up. I would have went around it when I should have went through it. I would have went above it when I should have went through it. And now again, having stayed sober long enough, I've also learned that thank God, God is God. And when I want to make my God laugh, I tell him how my day's going to go. Again, getting back to the topic of this conversation, when is enough enough? I find myself as a 35-year-old homeless heroin addict who resides on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, letting men blow me just to secure another bag of heroin. My worldly possessions, everything that I own in this world, consists of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. It fits into that bag that doubles my pillow, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order that my mother just had served against me to get out of her house. I just woken up off life support. How did I get here? I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations. I got here because the disease of addiction does not discriminate. Yale or jail, White House or the outhouse, the results are all the same. I'm a 35-year-old homeless heroin addict who wants to kill himself on a daily basis, but I don't want to hurt myself in the process. I'm hard with suicide because I keep waking up and I'm in a position in life where I'm so low the curve looks like a skyscraper. A whole series of events take place that I just do not have the time to get into right now. So long story short, I end up in my parole officer's office. And she said, "Mr. Novak, we're not going to waste anyone's time this morning. I'm not going to ask you for a urinalysis. You're not going to give me a reason why you can't produce the urinalysis. We're going to cut right to the chase. Would you like one more chance to save your life?" Now remember, I possessed that job that consisted of knowing everything. When the disease of my addiction started at the age of 17. Now I'm in a position in life where no matter what I try to do, I cannot remove my obsession or lift me of the desire to want to get high. You name it, I've tried it. I've moved to London, I've moved to Paris, I've moved to Finland, I've moved all over the United States, I've changed women, I've changed homes, I've changed careers. But now I'm a 35-year-old homeless heroin addict who cannot put enough heroin into a needle any longer that will allow me to escape the reality that I, Brandon Novak, have created for myself. When is enough enough? For this alcoholic, enough had to become enough when the drink and the drugs stopped working. Every morning I would go out and I would secure $180 worth of heroin and cocaine, and I would load that thing into my tool, and I literally could not put another drip of water on it or else the plunger would come out, and I would put that thing in me, and I swear to God, without fail, that delusional effect that was always produced upon each shot, which would allow me to escape my reality that I had created for myself. Therefore, not only was it like tolerable, it was almost desirable. These animalistic ways that I possess and live with now as a direct result of my act of addiction and alcoholism. But what do I do when I load that thing up and that effect is no longer being produced, meaning that moment of clarity is 24/7 when I'm high and sober? Fuck. I've came too far now. I'm 35 years old. You name it, I've given it. So when she said, "Would you like another chance to save your life?" I didn't skip a beat. I said, absolutely not. I had been to this particular facility 4 previous attempts out of my 13 overall attempts of sobriety, of inpatient facilities. And what would happen each time, I would sit in the same chair with the same intake coordinator previously to May 25th, 2015. She would say, "Okay, Mr. Novak, your insurance covers 90 days. And I would say, in theory, 90 days sounds great, but in reality, I'm more of like a 45-day kind of fellow. I have this woman to do, this state to go to, this job to fulfill." And she would gently laugh at me each and every time and say, "Sweetheart, you have no idea. Anything and everything that you put in front of your recovery does not or will not matter because you will lose it." And I said quite clearly, "You didn't get my resume, right? I guess you didn't see that, like, New York Times selling author who had written a book on addiction, former professional skateboarder, touring the world with Tony Hawk, hanging out with Michael Jordan, been in these movies to break box office records. My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. You clearly have me mistaken for someone else." On May 25th, 2015, the terms of my contract had changed. The day that God saw fit to do for me what I could not do for myself, which was simply remove me from my drug and drink of choice, because I'm not capable of producing the results for which you see me in. I promise you that. May 25th, 2015, he decided to remove me from my disease of my addiction. And I'm sitting in the same chair with the same intake coordinator, and she said, "Okay, Mr. Novak, your insurance will cover 90 days. And she had given me this offer many times before. And today, when she gave me this offer, I could not even come back with a counter offer, because if I said no, it entailed an explanation. I finally had been demoralized in just such a fashion. I had been beaten into a state of reasonableness by my disease of addiction that honestly, I was beaten speechless. I couldn't even talk, because if I said no, that entailed an explanation. So when she said I was covered for 90 days, all I could do was simply shake my head yes. She said, "Sweetheart, you're in no condition to do your intake. Get up to detox. I'll see you in 4 days." I walk up to detox. And again, the story's way too long for me to get into this with you, but my clothes were literally hanging on by a shoestring. I had got robbed prior to walking into treatment, and they ripped my front and my back pockets out, and I had no underwear on, so my front and my back were completely exposed. I had these, at one point in time, nice Brooks Brothers shoes, but I had lost a shoestring along the way, so there's only one shoestring in. My front and my back's exposed, and I got this button-up shirt on, but they ripped it open, and the only button that's buttoned is this very top button like this, and I come strolling into treatment looking like a gay East LA cholo gangbanger, and someone out there might say, "Well, why didn't you like put some underwear on? Why didn't you change your pants?" Because the reality of the disease of addiction from which I possess, and you might say, wow, he's pretty upfront, he's very graphic with his story. You're right, I absolutely am, because I keep my past married to my present, because the moment that this alcoholic forgets where I come from, I will return. I've seen me do it before many a times. You know, and I go walking into this detox, and there's this 19-year-old real happy-go-lucky tech work, and he said, "Mr. Novak, you're back." And I said, "Aren't you a fucking genius? Nothing gets past you, does it, boy?" And he said, "Mr. Novak, I regret to inform you, but your clothes are not rehab-oriented. You need some underwear, you need some sweats, you need some slides. I told you, the disease of addiction from which I possess does not allow me to own such simple articles of clothing. What I walked into treatment with was my worldly possessions: 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. It fits into that bag that doubles as my pillow, my needle, my spoon, and my restraining order that my mother served me to get the fuck out of her house." He said, "Okay, Mr. Novak, come downstairs to the basement. We're going to go to the donations room and see if we can find you some used underwear." And now I have been to enough treatment centers to hear you people telling me that a grateful addict will never use again and a grateful alcoholic will never drink again. Cut to May 25th, 2015. I'm standing in the basement of a Catholic Charities rehab that cost me $2 to get into. I'm the first skateboarder that was ever endorsed by Gatorade, hanging out with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk, designing my pro model private tutor flew with. In these movies that break box office records, New York Times top 10 selling author who had written a book on addiction. My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. My father died as a direct result of addiction. The reason why I would never become those people. I find myself almost 5 years ago to today, standing in the basement of a Catholic Charities rehab as I'm holding this 19-year-old kid's cell phone to shine a light into this dark room where he's digging in these boxes and he's trying to find me a pair of 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th hand used underwear, and I'm praying to God that he finds me. Remember, I told you my life is live forward and learn backwards. And if anyone's out there and you're listening to my message and you're struggling and you're not understanding why you're where you're at, you don't believe that there's any hope in your future, there's no light at the end of your tunnel, please allow me to tell you, if you're waiting for the blessing, it's already taken place. It's already taken place. And the reason why I say that is this, right? I'm not just fucking spouting off these words so you think that I'm like this slick talking, articulate, intelligent alcoholic with a little bit of knowledge under this fucking junky brain from which I possess. No. I'm telling you because my message holds depth and weight, because I've seen me be there for many of years. And what I just said is because of this. Standing in the basement, 35 years old. Just walked into my 13th inpatient treatment center. I had just woken up from being on life support for 7 days. My mother had bought me a plot, medevacs, 4 different hospitals, 4 different states from 4 different overdoses. My mother had prayed for me for God to either cure me or kill me, serve me with a restraining order. I'm standing in the basement of a Catholic Charities rehab. This 19-year-old tech thumbing through these boxes looking for some used underwear. I'm praying to God that he finds them. How did I get here? At that moment in time, no word properly sufficed to explain how bad I felt about my life. There was no light at the end of my tunnel. Little did I know, the terms of my contract were changing as I knew it. Standing in that basement, I was being divinely inconvenienced more than I ever thought was possible. And 2 things were about to take place that were forever going to change the trajectory of which my life goes in. The first thing that happened, right? And I'm telling you, There's no word. Imagine if you open up the English dictionary and you add the word less to every word in that book. That's who I was and how I felt about myself. Sometimes I go back there, man. The difference a day can make. And as I'm standing there, all of a sudden, right, that guy who possessed that job for 24 years of active alcoholism and addiction that consisted of knowing everything, I had finally come to the realization at 35 years old, standing in the basement of my 13th inpatient treatment center, as this 19-year-old tech thumps through these boxes looking for some used underwear. I'm praying to God that he finds them. You know what I know? You know what I know? I know that I don't fucking know. And my very best thinking, time after time after time, places me in a position like this. And the second thing that was about to take place that was forever going to change my life happened in the form of me coming face to face with the God of my understanding as a direct result of that gift of desperation. Right? That spiritual experience that did for me what I could not do for myself. No human power could lift me of the obsession or rid me of the desire. And with that, I met the God of my understanding as a direct result of that gift of desperation. The pain had become great enough. All of a sudden, I'm now willing to do whatever you suggest, meaning I am open-minded because I know that I no longer know. And the kid hands me, he says, I'm sorry, there's no underwear in here, Mr. Novak, but what I do have is these sweatpants. And he hands me a pair of size 40 women's sweatpants with no drawstring. He hands me a woman's tank top and a pair of size 13 Jesus sandals. I don't know how alert or attentive any of the lovely ladies and gentlemen out here are, but I'm not a woman that I do not wear a size 13. But I had taken these clothes and I had ran upstairs. I got a shower. I got that Baltimore City smell off me. Never so grateful to put on women's clothing in my life. I was overcome with a sense of willingness, unlike anything a human being could ever provide for me. I stayed in that treatment center for 90 days. What I learned in that treatment center is that my mentality will create the reality for which I live in. And if I change my perception, I can change my world. And that one day, my defects, the very same thing that brought me in there, my addiction, my alcoholism, could become my assets. The very same thing that brings me here with you, lovely ladies and gentlemen. A few days prior to my 5-year anniversary, to deliver a message of promise, hope, and freedom that does not consist of a drink or a drug, that if I can do it, you can do it too, because all I'm simply doing is delivering this message in a form of attraction, not promotion. From that treatment center, after 90 days, I went to a sober living house for 1 year. I've been on parole and probation from 16 years old to 35, never a free day in between. It just simply followed me from state to state. On my 23 months of sobriety, I signed my release papers. I'm no longer property of any person, state, or place. I no longer live in that self-induced prison that consists of a 4-block radius that cost me $10 to get out of one bag at a time. I decided I wanted to get my 2-year medallion abroad, so I flew to Paris to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and picked up my 2-year medallion. On my 3rd year of anniversary of sobriety, I bought a home. On my 4th year of sobriety, I went to Amsterdam, to a 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I got my medallion. Most people wouldn't choose to go to Amsterdam to celebrate their sobriety, but guess what? I'm a free man that can go anywhere with anybody anytime I like. because I stay submerged in my sobriety. Remember, I have a disease called alcoholism, not alcoholism. My mother, the very same mother that bought me a plot, the very same mother that took life insurance policies on me, the very same mother that served me the restraining order, the very same mother that went to God and said, please cure him or kill him. I can't take it anymore. Called me 9 months into my sobriety and said, I hate when you come to visit. I said, why? And she said, because I get so sad when you leave. I'm going to close with this story. There's a father that works from home, and the father's swamped in paperwork, and he's watching his son, and his son keeps banging on the knee. Dad, take him out to play, take him out to play. And the father's trying to think of a way to buy 1 or 2 days to finish all his paperwork. And the father looks in his office, and in his office on his desk is a big picture of the puzzle of the world map. And the father thinks to himself, I got it. And he walks into his office directly to that desk, and he completely dismantles the picture of the puzzle of the world map, and he throws it on the floor in hundreds of pieces. And he said, son, when you put the picture of the puzzle of the world map back together, I'll take you out to play. And the father leaves that room surely thinking he bought 1 or 2 days. 20 minutes later, the son comes back, and he bangs the dad on the knee. He said, Dad, I did it. Dad's thinking to himself, impossible. He walks back into that office as sure as the day is long, the picture of the puzzle of the world maps put back together. He said, son, how did you do it? Son looked at his dad with a smile on his face and said, Dad, it was real simple. On the back of the picture of the puzzle of the world map was a picture of a man. I put the man back together. The world fell back in place. In 6 days, I'll be celebrating 5 years of continuous sobriety. So again, I showed up here tonight to deliver my message of promise, hope, and freedom, because what I've learned is that together we can stand. Divided, I'll fucking die. My name is Brandon. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Amazing.
Wow, I'm like fired up right now. That got me going, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, yeah.
So we've got a couple of questions. The first one is, she says, thank you for speaking so genuinely. I was wondering, when you felt low, how did you lift yourself up without alcohol or drugs? I guess I also mean, what changed in your mindset that one day, May 24th, 2015, you were doing things that were not good for you, and the next day your perspective must have changed as you quit. For people with some kind of self-destructive issues, what advice do you have?
You know, I got to a point in my life where I had attempted to get sober enough times where I had witnessed people like Vicky come in, and they would get sober and they would stay sober and they would accumulate like years of recovery and sobriety. And yet I'm choosing, keyword, I am choosing to stay stuck on stupid because I believe that I know, and I live off instant gratification. And that was all fine and well at treatment center number 1 at the age of 17. Walking into that treatment center number 13 at the age of 35, all the friends from which I possessed that used to love me, used to care about me, now like have homes, have careers, have families, have priorities, have values, have beliefs. And I'm completely alone out here on the streets, living on that animalistic level. The abnormal has become the normal. I'm so disconnected from reality and or abnormality. But the saddest thing about that is that it was completely self-induced. I had created this picture for which I live in. No one else had done this. Right? So there's not just one answer that I could give that will say, you know what, that's what I should do. It was a series of events that had taken place where I believe all of a sudden the stars had aligned, May 25th, 2015, for me to like basically say, you know what, I don't know anymore. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Awesome. Thank you. Next question is from our friends over at Therapy Works. And the question is, did you forgive yourself?
yeah, but not immediately. I had to do a lot of internal work in order to achieve these external results for which you see me in. And that came as a direct result of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The God of my understanding brought me to AA, and AA via the 12 steps of my have brought me directly to the God of my understanding. And I've done enough third steps to know that God is everything. My defects have become my assets. So I believed I was placed in this position today to simply let people know that there is a way up and out of their position, provided they get the fuck out of their way. I can't give you advice on how to conduct a brain surgery, or how to prepare this year's taxes, or how to properly divorce your spouse. But what I can give you some advice on that I know through and through, and that will more so than not be accurate, is about the disease of addiction and alcoholism.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. This next one is from Kim, and she says, what do you say to someone who thinks they don't have a problem?
Now, again, these answers that you're asking me, these questions that you're answering me, the answers that I'm giving to you are my opinions and my experiences. What we've learned is that it's a case-by-case scenario and or situation. If it was a black and white, one size fits all, we would not be in this pandemic that we're in today with addiction. I believe that God is everything. I believe that people's experience has to be their experience. I don't put expectations on any person, place, or thing. I accept them for exactly where they are and what they're doing. Now, if that's directly affecting me, I create these healthy boundaries. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And if and when they're ready to ever reach out and ask for my help, I'm there.
Awesome. Perfect. And the next question is, when you feel triggered, what form or forms of care do you practice to not act out on feelings?
I believe, well, triggered's a loaded question, pun intended. See, I've even fucking gained this this personality, a new sense of humor and sobriety. But if we're talking in the form of a drink or a drug triggered, I believe there's three parts to a relapse. I believe there's the thought, the plan, and the action. I still have the thought. I mean, it's like trying to tell Michael Jordan, who's retired from playing basketball, to never think of playing basketball. The thought appears less and less the longer I stay sober. I can tell you, I've had the thought, I've never had the plan, and I've never had the action, because I'm coming over 5 years. And only through the grace of God, my sobriety has been a really even keel. And that's because they told me in treatment, listen, kids, stick to the basics, so God willing, you never have to go back to the basics. I'm an active participant in my sobriety. I have a sponsor. I sponsor people. I have a connection with my higher power, and I'm in the middle of that triangle. Trust God, clean house, help others. I do that on a daily basis. And with those things, attached, I have not had the desire to pick up a drink or a drug once in my 5 years of continuous sobriety. But there's been times for other things, my behaviors, that have placed me in some positions that I wasn't happy with, and I had to take it to the God of my understanding. Because they also told me there's going to come a point in time where no one's going to be around to help you except for the God of your understanding, such as this corona. The reason why we're here, right? The COVID-19, the corona, why this whole thing that we're doing tonight was started, right? Practice social distance. We had to practice social distancing. We had to quarantine ourselves. But the opposite of addiction is connection, right? So I had to figure out, fuck, what do? I can't go out. I can't be near people. I can't call people. Well, what I had to do is I had to make sure I really had a conscious contact with the God of my understanding, that higher power who did for me what I could not do for myself, which was lift me of the obsession, rid me of the desire. And I had to get on my knees a lot. You know, and then I talked to another alcoholic and I voiced the thoughts that this crazy fucking problem of mine, because the drink and the drug is not my problem. It's the answer to my problem. The problem is which lies between my ears, my thinking, my attitude, my behavior. I bounce this shit off them and they say, you're absolutely mental. No, we're not going to do that. Or, you know, so there's layers to it.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandon. Next one is from Denise. She says that she provides addiction treatment and education to the inmates at the jail in Cumberland, Maryland, many of which are familiar with Baltimore, living there or getting more to sell. She uses your YouTube videos with her classes to teach them about the disease. What would you like her to share with these inmates, if anything?
I mean, that your history does not have to dictate your future, but it can most certainly guide and direct it. The disease of addiction is not a death sentence. Feelings aren't facts. Feelings pass. Boys do what they want to do. Men do what they have to do. There's going to come a point in time where you need to suit up and show up. You know, there's a billion things and all these hallmark sayings that reside on the walls of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that I could say. But I guess ultimately what would get through to that particular audience, if you will, is that you won't win. You won't win. I've had a lot of friends with a lot of money, property, and prestige that have given it their all to try to beat the disease of addiction on their own. And that could look like using without repercussions or successfully drinking and drugging, and they don't win. You know, everything that I could say has been said a billion times before, you know, but your life goes in one of three directions. Two, really, because they're already in jails. So the next best is institutions and or death. And those things never scared me. What scared me into sobriety was, and even now, to think to drink is to die, that doesn't fucking scare me, because that wasn't my reality, right? And my experience is my reality. And what my reality scares me to death is that I drink, I don't die, I have to wake up every day and use against my will, furthermore, doing things to secure $10 more to get something that I don't even want to get anyways, but I don't have the privilege to not get because my disease says, bitch, shut up and go. That's hell on earth. Try that for size.
Awesome. And Denise, also, I'll share this link with you if you want to show them this video too. That might help. Okay, so this next one is from Alexa. Says, that was amazing, Brandon. Growing up watching you, you were the last one of those guys I imagine getting sober. LOL. I love your honesty about the depths of heroin addiction and your passion for AA. How long did ego keep you sick? What is your experience with 12-stepping a male with long-term sobriety whose ego is keeping them sick, who had long-term sobriety and has now relapsed?
It's tough. My ego kept me sick forever, man, until, you know, because left to my own devices, I will drink again. And what my own devices is very simple. Brandon only attends Brandon's Anonymous. Brandon only sponsors Brandon. and Brandon is Brandon's God. And then what will happen if I'm doing those three things for a significant period of time, is that I'll believe that voice that talks to me in my own voice that says, you can probably go out and have one successfully because like you're 5 years sober and things are different now, you know? So where does ego come into that story? Well, when Brandon is Brandon's God, all I've simply done is I've told you what ego stands for. EGO. I've eased God out. And now Brandon has taken the place and Brandon is God. And then I believe that voice that talks to me, my own voice. And then I go from here and I go cop some dope. And the scary thing is that I can make that make complete sense to me. So again, I stick to the basics. So God will not have to go back to the basics. I always remember that feelings aren't facts and that feelings pass. I don't drink or drug despite any and all adverse consequences that come my way. I remember what they told me, that it was much easier to stay sober than get sober. And then with things like that along the way, right? Now people say, whoa, that guy Novak, he can seem to like make it through some really uninviting circumstances, undesirable experiences, and he stays sober. How the fuck does he do that? So right now I'm this guy in the rooms that people say I possess the spiritual experience that can only be delivered by God, and I'm a free man. People now want what I have, and then I get a guy who's been sober for some time, and he goes out and uses, and he's got to come back, and his ego's running rampant because he knows. And then I'm saying to myself, well, how do I help this guy? He's been through the steps multiple times with multiple different sponsors. He's helped tons of people. The reality is, it takes what it takes until it takes. And who am I to say what it will be for it to take? I didn't know my 13th attempt at treatment center number 13 was going to be the one. They didn't tell me anything different from treatment center number 13 than they told me from 8 or 4 or 1. The reality is, the God of my understanding saw fit for everything to align, and me to not only hear but listen. All of a sudden, I'm now open-minded, willing to follow the suggestions. I've done my way into this, and now, I'm here. We're coming on 5 years of sobriety. So to answer your question, which I was kind of doing that whole way, giving you like this storyline to go with it, is that I don't treat them any different than the guy who just walked in, who's never been through the 12 steps, or the guy who's never had any sobriety. Because who am I to say what it will take for it to take? The reality is, anyways, it's between that person and God. Like, I'm not powerful enough to save anybody's life, and I'm not powerful enough to kill anybody. That's not my role. My sponsor told me that. I went to him one time. I said, I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing that will, that could potentially kill him if he went out and used. And my sponsor said, don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. You're not powerful enough to kill anybody or save anybody. You're simply God's messenger.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. This is the last question. And this is from Katrina, and says, when you reflect, would there have been anything that would have made a difference for you when you were in one of the first therapy centers you accessed, or was it just a matter of timing for you? As a counselor who walks alongside people, I often wonder what I can do better to help.
I mean, I'm not a psychic. I can't predict the future, but what I think may have helped, and what does really well with me to date, is that I don't ever tell anybody what they should do unless they ask. I simply tell them about myself and how my deal played out. I'm delivering the same message that's been delivered time after time after time. It's simply a sleight of hand card game trick kind of thing. Smoking mirrors, if you will. I'm presenting this present that's been presented many a times before, over and over and over, so much so that it becomes repetitive to the recipient. So I had to become creative or clever enough to say, what would make me want to receive this present that they've tried to give to me? You know what I mean? How am I going to dress this present up in a different box with a cooler bow to make it look so appealing that the recipient will want to fuck it? I deliver my message in a form of attraction rather than promotion. But it's a very delicate dance. A lot of sleight of hand card game shit. A lot of wordplay. And I never put expectations on those people. I meet them exactly where they're at, not where I believe they should be heading. And we figure it out together, if they want it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we had one more question come in here, and that'll be the last one for real. In the beginning of your continued sobriety, did you have to distance yourself from lifelong friends like CKY? What can you tell people in similar situations who need to get sober but are terrified of the idea of losing their closest friends? I would imagine that was a strong component for you.
Not at all, really. Not at all. Because here's the reality. If you're really doing the deal, like I was really doing the deal, the people that I was partying with prior to sobriety, all that simply happened is that my interests had now changed. So I didn't need to call them up and say, hey, man, I love you, but I can't hang with you because you're a real jeopardy to my sobriety. No. The reality is, if last week I was in the pub till 5 a.m. sniffing cocaine and drinking wine with them, it's pretty safe to say that a month goes by, they're not going to want to go hang out with me in AA meetings and go drink coffee with me and a bunch of dudes afterwards. Right? I didn't have to call them and say, hey, it's best if we part ways. The reality is that my interest had changed. They're not going to want to do what I'm doing. I definitely don't want to do what they're doing. So we love each other just as much, probably more. But you know, we don't really have much in common.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's it for the Q&A. Vicky, Shannon, did you guys have any final thoughts you wanted to share?
I just want to say, Brandon, I really appreciate your humble heart. You were super moving for me. And I also, what my takeaways from your share are basically, it was such a reality check in the realm of our disease, the disease of addiction, like fair game on everyone, like just fair game, reality check of where we go and where it takes us, which was deeply moving. And also the other reality check is it doesn't matter who we are or, you know, where we come from or how much money we have or fame or fortune or any of that. Like, we all have this in common, and this disease will level our ass. And I am so grateful that you shared your message with us. So thank you for all your time today.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. I love it every time I hear you. And I love when men are able to get vulnerable and, you know, tell their truth about the things that happen in the disease. I think a lot of you know, women have a lot of things that happen that are shameful and traumatic, but we don't seem to have as much trouble opening up about it. And I really appreciate that you open up like that. I think guys hear that and they see you and hear you, and I think it's super, super helpful. I know I got a lot of guys who have gone through what you have gone through in the disease, and the shame of it seems to take them back out over and over. So thank you so much for your vulnerability. It's so important to a lot of men out there. Thank you. I love you.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, thank you so much. And everybody that joined us today, really, really appreciate you coming on. Great questions. And I'm going to email you a link to this video. We had a bunch of people in the chat asking for it for a replay. So I'll make sure everybody gets a link. Like Shannon mentioned, please help us out with the survey. Otherwise, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll see you next week. Brandon, again, thank you so, so much for that powerful share, man.
Love you. God
Bye,
bless.
guys.
Love you, Brandon. See you soon.
Hey, love you, baby. I'll talk to you soon, Vic.
Yeah, I'll call you. Bye.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye, guys.